It's been 3 long years since Gunvolt 2, the 2D platforming keynote itself, but we've been graced with another entry for the Blue Lightning Boy. Finally, after waiting and waiting, being teased with the Risei Kuchikawa of 2D platforming, and just drooling at the mouth for how good Gunvolt 3 could be, we were graced with an announcement for the next Gunvolt game. I've been waiting for this. Gunvolt 3, baby!
Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X.
What? No. No way! New Gunvolt! And it stars Copen this time? Word? That was my reaction in a nutshell. Copen's gameplay, in my eyes at least, was just as fun as GV's for different reasons. So a whole game fleshing that out potentially further with tons more stages tailor-made for him seemed like a really cool idea. Then there's the story, especially with how the best 2D platformer ended. Copen's whereabouts left a lot of questions in the air, and with one of the biggest twists at the end regarding his own sister, and my freaking Cocoa Puff, don't you dare do anything to her, Inchi, I'm serious! I was very curious to see how his outlook on Adepts would develop. He's still got a lot of room for growth, so give our boy a good arc that shows him maturing and maybe mellowing out a bit, and we could have a great character here. Above all else, what made me the most excited was the fact that this was the first entry to be made specifically for consoles from the ground up. While it's most likely because the 3DS is now resting in peace, I saw this as a blessing. The more powerful hardware meant that the game could be pushed even further than possible in the previous 2 entries, and whether that means featuring more levels, giving the visuals a heck of an upgrade, or whatever, I was looking forward to seeing this game push itself to finally get this series in the spotlight like it deserves. I beat it as quickly as possible, played it another time through while replaying stages a whole bunch for the sake of the review, and my thoughts are a lot more interesting than I expected. See, I love this game, but at the same time, I'm disappointed. Zafre? Disappointed in a Gunvolt game? Well, kinda, because I still do love the game. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get into this properly and you'll hopefully see where I'm coming from. Just like the previous 2 entries, let's start off at story time with Zafre. It seems as though it's been a few years since the holy grail of 2D platforming, because Adepts are now the dominant species, humans have been renamed Minos, and Sumeragi has been reformed into the Sumeragi Institute of Human Evolution, and is bent on hunting down all Minos to extinction for a new age of humanity. Well geez, we just started, Inti! Someone's resting in peace, aren't they? Thankfully for the Minos, one hero stands against Sumeragi for the sake of protecting who's left, and that person is our boy, the one, the only, Gunvolt, Copen. Okay, Copen's the only one standing up to Sumeragi now. Of course, joined by the oh-so-lovable Lola. And it's up to them to protect what's left of the Minos and find what they refer to as the butterfly effect. Ooh, so mysterious. After the first intro stage, they're introduced to yet another group of companion characters that'll be hanging out at their base of operations and taking part in the game's selection of conversations. We've got the main one, Kohaku, along with Kyota, Jin, and Maria. Had to look those up, I couldn't remember them for the life of me. And in another group of not-robot masters, the captain stage are all set for a new adventure? Wait, that's it? Huh. Well, alrighty then. The beginning of the game isn't the only part of the story that's much more straight to the point. Luminous Avenger X's story in general is simpler and shorter than the previous entries. I'd call this both a good and a bad thing. On one hand, previous Gunvolt games tended to throw a lot at you from the get-go, but this game's introduction to the story was far more digestible while letting you in on everything it's trying to do. Not to mention there are fewer shorter scenes both in and out of stages, meaning you'll be getting right to the gameplay at a quicker pace. For those who felt like the last entries had a bit more story than needed, I'm sure you'll enjoy the smaller focus on it for this entry. On the other hand, I personally was a fan of the game's stories, especially as the bigger picture grew alongside the series. So I wish the story had more focus, or dare I say, effort. First off, it's way too short, and I know what you're thinking, didn't you just say in the last video that length doesn't matter? I did, but I also said that the level of satisfaction is what matters most. Basically, be how short or long you want, but make the most of your time. This game doesn't do that, and it feels like it ends right as things are getting started. Just look at the missions, there isn't much of any purpose. Yeah, let's have a whole level based around getting more food for our home base, which just so happens to have a boss there at the time. Why does this have anything to do with finding information about the butterfly effect? There are a handful of levels where you're getting valuable information on what and where it is, but there are also some that feel like filler episodes in an anime. The first game consisted of GV doing odd jobs for Quill, so he was just trying to make money. In 2D platforming Bay, both characters were spending every mission hunting down the 7 who had Joel shards. Each stage was a step toward the character's goals, and even with a relatively short length, you were always moving forward. When things finally start moving, you're hit with some crazy plot twists. Without a doubt, the high points of the game for me. Although the game doesn't do too good a job at explaining it all, was that just me? I was confused by some twists around the end and had to get it explained, but maybe I'm just a dum-dum. That's a very high possibility. But just when you think, oh man, this changes everything, what's next? it's over. What? It was just getting good. It doesn't help that the ending just sorta happens. Like right after the climax, we get credits with a small resolution afterwards. Easily the weakest ending in the series that's obviously setting up a Gunvolt Chronicles 2, so I'm looking forward to see what that does with all this game sets up, but that's the thing. I'm already looking forward to what's next rather than enjoying what I have. It reminds me of the Exilate games. Oh. Dang it! I mentioned Tales in a non-Tales video game. I'm sorry, okay? I just can't help it, alright? Hate to say it, but I don't think this is a good story critically speaking, and I don't even enjoy it personally. Was left very unsatisfied, which I guess is okay since these games are more for the gameplay, but as someone who enjoyed the series' overarching narrative, I wanted more. But hey, I enjoy these stories for the characters, so they're just as likable and fun as always, right? I mean, kinda? Starting with the Minos kids, they're cute, sure, but the story had no interest in fleshing them out. Like I said earlier, I couldn't even remember their names. Even with the flavor text, they're alright I guess, but pale in comparison to the Quill fam from the original, and your new buddy is on both ends of the spectrum from God's gift to 2D platforming. Kohaku's cool though, even if I'm not at all a fan of her design. Seriously, this girl's 14, what's up with this? FBI, open up! Lola unfortunately doesn't get much screen time either, but she remains her likable self from the sequel, so I can't be too mad. I liked her already and this simply gave me more of her. Now, Copen was definitely treated the best, as he's a lot more chill and mellowed out than before. Hey, it's almost like that's exactly what I wanted. Crazy! His hatred towards Adams could get a bit out of hand, but he's matured a lot since we last saw him, and I really like this change to his character. He grew up from the troubled kid into the hero he needs to be, much to my and many others' appreciation. Hope we get something similar from him in Gunvolt 3. Finally, we have our villains, and I gotta say, while I like the group we have here, I think they're also my least favorite out of the different bunches we've gotten. Now don't get me wrong, they're good, it's just the other sets of Not Robot Masters were fantastic. Blade was the only one to stick out to me, as they were absolutely amazing and one of my favorite characters in the whole game, but the others, they're kinda lacking this time around, and what's up with that? Previous enemies only needed one stage to steal my heart, why is it different here? Well, this game doesn't have in-stage dialogue, so while we get some insight to their character before we fight, which I really loved, it's still service value compared to all the characterization and banter we got from earlier titles. I'm really confused as to why they took this out. Lola will hype you up whenever you get combos during stages, and what she's saying is put in a little speech bubble so the words don't take up nearly as much space as they used to. Perfect for having character conversations without getting in the way. I just wanted them to be in English at the very least so I can hear what they're saying while playing. Improve on the concept, don't just take it out. This is the main reason why I found myself underwhelmed by a lot of these characters. They didn't have enough time. By default, I only loved Copen, Lola, Blade, and Kohaku simply because they show up more than once and were given depth and development. Even still, that's merely a fraction of our cast this time around. Nearly every aspect of this game's story didn't mesh well with me, becoming more interesting far too late, and having a majority of its cast being meh. The story is a big selling point for me and many others, and while sure, I'll always acknowledge gameplay as the most important part of these games, it's nice having other motivations to move forward other than getting good at the mechanics. I hope the next game does better in this area because I wasn't too impressed with this game narratively speaking. But how about that gameplay? In terms of his controls, Copen's even better than he was in the top tier 2D platformer. He generally has the same set of controls, which is a great thing, just with a couple of changes here and there. One of said changes is that now after you air dash, he'll hover infinitely until he either lands, dashes again, or you manually cancel it with a jump button. This means you can also activate a hover on command with said jump button. I love this, as it gives me further control over where he goes and I don't have to worry about him just stopping to hover after a couple of seconds like last time. Privation and Reincarnation are back, and thankfully this game makes it clear that Reincarnation gives you infinite bullets, infinite privation, and access to all overdrive skills, so it isn't as seemingly useless as it was last time. You still get 0 kudos when using this though, and I suggest that you play at least without privation like before. So you know what that means, time to de-equip it in the customization menu, and holy crap, you can turn privation and Reincarnation off with a switch in the pause menu? Yes! And the game even tells you right at the start that privation pretty much makes you invincible, letting you know that you'll be missing out on a ton of the game's challenge with it on. This is exactly what I wanted, and I hope that they keep these features in from this point onward, because wow! Not to mention, privation got hella nerfed, which I adore. If you didn't know, whenever I review a Gunvolt game, I at least play through it twice. Once without privation and another with it. Last time with Copen, you only consumed 1 bullet when using privation, but this time you used 2, meaning you have fewer opportunities to abuse it. Doesn't seem like much, but I found myself taking a lot more damage in my privation run to my absolute enjoyment. The game keeps its challenge even with this mechanic, making for a tough experience no matter what you do. Love it, love it, love it. Customization's also been handled differently than the entire series up to this point. Instead of using materials to make new equipment for added perks, you instead get said perks by just purchasing them through money, and I'm not a fan of this. Equipment was never a necessity of Gunvolt, it was always part of the reward for getting good. Higher ranks and stages meant more materials, therefore more of a chance to get high tier equipment, and even though you would still still have to replay stages for more materials depending on what you wanted, that went hand in hand with the Gunvolt mindset. You're supposed to replay stages in order to master them, and the game gives you more ways to make your character stronger for doing just that. Here you're just grinding money. Replaying stages or not, the process is just as slow and you'll probably end up reloading in a specific spot just to speed up the process. It doesn't help that most of these are so freaking expensive, like jeez. And because for some reason this game doesn't have an achievement system, which were 100% optional and rewarded you with materials and money to make getting equipment even easier, that's not only a sad exclusion but slows down the process of getting new perks even more. Of course, these extra benefits aren't a necessity. In fact, the score attack mode takes these upgrades away from you and only lets you use the base kit, but they were always nice and never too much of a pain to get. Also, one of them is borderline mandatory, but I'll get to that in just a sec. I hope we go back to the way it used to be in the future, and the same goes for Copen's special attack. In the 2D platforming Overlord, he was already very limited in this aspect because he had one special move, a glorified screen nuke, and a full heal. Was expecting him to get an equal amount to how many Gunvolt has since, you know, he's the only playable character in this game, but no, he's even more limited. How so? He doesn't have a full heal anymore, just a screen nuke. And at least it looks cooler than ever before. I mean, what do you expect when you hit the dab this hard? But a heal begs to be here with the difficulty in these games. In fact, you know that purchasable perk I alluded to a minute ago? Guess what? It allows your special attack to fully heal you, and that's so lame. Sometimes I just want to use a special, and sometimes I just want to heal myself. Why limit the player more this time around? Doesn't help that every upgrade is so darn expensive. I didn't even have enough money to purchase it in my Pervasion playthrough since I used all my funds on more EX weapon energy. And let's not forget that the game's score attack sets you to your base kit, so you don't even have a healing option in that mode. Sure, level ups always fully heal you, and in this game checkpoints will heal you as well, but you're not always guaranteed a level up when playing through a stage, and some of the special missions in score attack don't even have a checkpoint, meaning in combination with you being set to level 1, low HP and all, and having no healing options in boss battles, have fun! At least the game's selection of EX weapons are really good this time around. My favorite was Orbital Edge for being quick and powerful, helping me reach those higher scores by chaining aerial EX attacks. They're all pretty good though, and have a lot of variety too. A powerful air dash, an anti-air whirlpool, and a freaking blanket? Not to mention you even get a new mode, Darkness Trigger. Infinite EX weapon energy and buffed strength to set EX weapons, but you have to constantly attack because you'll gradually take damage if you aren't locked onto anything. This opens the gate for more ways to play similar stages and new strategies for reaching those higher rankings with risk-reward gameplay, just like the series already encourages. Such a cool addition. Heck, I could say the same for all the weapons in general. Loved the kit we were given over the course of the game. Unless it was being used as a boss's weakness. For some odd reason, boss weaknesses are much more prevalent this time around by both reducing their HP at a laughable pace or spark mandrill syndrome. A term coined by one of my biggest inspirations to completionists, spark mandrill syndrome refers to a boss from Mega Man X. Its weakness would freeze it in place, and as soon as it would break out, you could instantly hit them again, freezing them in place once more, and the process would repeat and repeat until they were defeated. This makes the boss an absolute joke if you use its weakness, and unfortunately a lot of bosses in this game suffer from the same thing if you use their weakness. What a weird choice to make considering boss weaknesses were such an afterthought in the last game, and as far as I know, nobody really cared either. Not every boss suffers from spark mandrill syndrome, but enough to make me notice and chalk it up as a flaw with the game. You're never required to use boss weaknesses, but the fact that this is a possibility in general is baffling to say the least. It's also a disservice to these boss fights because just like the previous entries, they're fantastic. If anything, you know you're in for some hype as heck boss battles with a Gunvolt game. I don't know how they keep providing such top tier fights, but please keep them coming. Fights are frantic, challenging, require strategy, your full attention, and are fair above all else. You can still do each and every one of these without taking a single hit, and I love that. 3 segments of health, gradually difficult phases, and a desperation attack, these are awesome. Except for this guy. His shield was annoying as crap, so thankfully you can break it with his weakness to make him more vulnerable, but not much you can do about his ridiculous special though. Am I the only one getting deja vu here? The stages that lead up to them are just as great too. Mainly linear with a handful of different methods to reach the goal, and emphasis on mastering the game's level collection, and interesting in terms of their layout and unique set pieces. They even added bonus emblems, not unlike Mario Star Coins or Sonic's Red Rings, that give you a heck of a kudos boost, adding a new way to reach the higher scores and increasing replay value. The games before kinda had something similar with 5 golden emblems that give you more materials at the end of stages, but because this game doesn't have materials, they didn't make the cut. These are cool though, and I wouldn't mind seeing them come back alongside the extra material medals in Gunvolt 3. Heck, these levels in general are cool, not to mention memorable. The zero gravity jumping between cargo ships in the sky, riding a slow moving elevator, or going on ahead using Copen's air dash and your own skill. These are tight. It's just a shame that much like the story, the selection of levels ends way too soon. You've got an intro stage, 3 stages after, a mid stage, 3 stages after that, a boss stage, and 3 final levels. However, the intro and mid stages are half the length of a normal sized level, and 2 of the final 3 stages are boss rush stages ending with a unique boss. This means if we were to combine the intro and mid stages as one stage, exclude the boss stage, and also leave out the special missions for being harder retreads of older stages, we've got a grand total of 10 stages, with 2 simply being boss rushes, making for an even lower total of 8 if you don't want to count those, in comparison to the original's 11 and the sequel's 12, or 20 if you want to count the post-game's extra stages in runner mode, and 24 if you want to count the repeat stages between both characters. Okay, so clearly Gunvolt games don't have the most levels, but I was hoping for the series' first console game it'd at least be a bit longer than the others, not shorter. It seems like every time I bring something up, there's something negative attached to it. Well, it's fine and all, something about this game just left me wanting more. The best way to explain this is by giving my thoughts in the presentation. Yeah, crazy, we're actually talking about Gunvolt's visuals and sound. It's not like they're bad in past games, it's just that I don't have much to say on them. Gunvolt 1 and 2 look really good. The pixel art is quite detailed, and the Switch and Steam versions of both games, well, almost both games, make them look even better. And while I like the first game's soundtrack, I love the second games, and both of their collections of vocal tracks are the stuff of dreams. Not much else to add, and I don't know, I don't find the game's presentation that important. That being said, since this was the first console game, I was looking forward to seeing how much better the games from here on out would look. I mean, the UI in of itself is already pretty promising, and I'll go ahead and say it's the best looking part of the game. Look at how clean it is. Pause menus and all, the bigger screen from the 3DS gave the developers a lot more breathing room, and they made good use of it. Also, I appreciate the dialogue spoken in stage being in this box now, or Lola's constant cheering being in that box anyway, since the game doesn't have in-stage dialogue now or whatever. Only issues in regards to the UI are I wish it would have the name of the person speaking at the time somewhere, and I also hope that they give characters more than one portrait in the future. It's hard to take Kohaku seriously in the game's more tense moments when she's frozen in that high school track team pose, but I don't think the actual game's visuals are anything the 3DS couldn't handle. The game looks good, don't get me wrong, but much like I've been repeating over the course of the video, I expected more. Same for the soundtrack, it's alright. Found a lot of the songs sounded a bit samey or just kinda whatever. Vocal tracks slapped like always, once again dominating the rest of the soundtrack. No complaints there whatsoever. They toned down her robotic filter, and that was definitely for the better. Igniter is the only returning song, and it sounds so much better when it already sounded Risei tier in the first place. But yeah, visuals in the regular soundtrack just don't bring the heat, and when I realized I felt this way, I realized that my expectations on this game, being the first console Gunvolt game and all, weren't reached. This is a great game, let's make that crystal clear right now. All the Gunvolt games are worth your time and money, and this one's no exception. It's just at this point in the series, I expect more. It's time for these games to start pushing themselves, and Luminous Avenger X just doesn't do that enough for me. It's extra frustrating because these games don't get the attention they deserve, but I'm afraid they aren't going to push themselves enough so that they do get that well-deserved attention. We've got to start taking more risks as we move on from here. I get that replayability is on the forefront for these games, but nowadays not enough people are in the mindset to replay games and stages over and over. It wouldn't hurt to add more stages and make the games longer going forward. I know we've got some kind of unspoken formula for Gunvolt, but break that formula. Nobody will care, and it'll give the games a lot more lasting power. I love the bits of post-game each entry has, so let's combine the ideas we have here on top of a longer campaign. Giving each boss an EX balls to the wall hard version of themselves is great, and so is adding an entirely new level design with past stages themes like Best 2D Platformer did in its post-game. Keep healing and offensive specials separate, make each mission have a purpose in the grand scheme of things, probably have more than one playable character next time, break the language barrier so everyone can fully enjoy the story, develop the story as far as possible within the game itself, and push the visuals in a way only consoles can provide. I'm asking for a lot, I know that, but my point is we've got to take more risks and do more with what we have. I don't want this series to become like Mega Man eventually did, where it plays things too safe and becomes afraid to break out of its own cycle. I believe that's what eventually killed him during the 2000s. Gunvolt as a franchise has so much potential, and Gunvolt Chronicles does too, so let's realize that. Let's bring this series' quality to a height so tall, so strong, so proud, that people will have to stop ignoring it and the Gunvolt games can get the recognition and attention they deserve. Here's hoping someone at NT Creates is listening and that the team pushes itself to the absolute limit with Gunvolt 3 and Gunvolt Chronicles 2, because you already know I'll be right there with it, looking forward to all this game setup and the great work I know this team is capable of. Whew, that was good. Ladies, gentlemen, everyone in between, that was the last Gunvolt game to this date. Well, if you don't count the Mighty Gunvolt and Mighty Gunvolt Burst spin-offs as part of the series. Maybe I'll get to them someday. But that's a whole playlist of the Gunvolt series reviewed by your boy, and I hope you enjoyed them. You won't have to wait too long on my next revolutionary review, whatever it is I decide to do next. And if this video is public, you can watch that review right heckin' now for just $1 on Patreon. Coupled with early video access, you get thanked at the end of my videos alongside these lovely bank dudes. Thank you so much, seriously, to Alex520, Copen Ardelane, Cleric Garrick, Comic Foil, Corbett, Finnaru, Florigrar, Forever Fizz8, Gaius, Gentleman Gamer, Jacob Porter, James V, Katie, Kiara Loveday, Kimpy7, Ludom James 115, Logan, Mitchie, Mongo, Neolab, Renegade Master, Rico Olive, Scott Appleman, Soul, Soracat, Steve Appleman, and Tex-Mex. You already know you all are the best people ever, and I want to also thank you, the viewer, for watching my content. I work hard on these, and it always makes me so giddy seeing how many of you are watching my stuff now. Let me stop before I get sappy. I'll see you next time. Drink plenty of water, unless you're Gunvolt, and until then... Bye.